Hi, hello, welcome everyone. Thank you for being here today. So my name is Alvaro. I'm very happy to have you all here. We are actually on the first webinar of 2021 of the product integration model, bringing one very special guest. So initially, I'd like to thank you all for being here today. I know it's like a different time zones for different people. I'd like to give a really warm welcome to Stefan, who is currently in Abu Dhabi, so it's a little bit later over there. So welcome, Stefan. Welcome here to this webinar.
Sorry, now I'm not muted. Hello, everyone. I'm excited to be here today with you and share my experience of running lean design sprints with you. So thanks, Alvaro, for your opening words, and thanks for PIM-Go for the invitation.
Yeah, actually, it's just so you know, like I met Stefan in New Zealand, and we did a lot of different projects together, kind of startups and interviewing users, and was very interesting. Stefan was really knowledgeable about IT and Agile and such, so it was kind of a happy coincidence to know that actually he was working something new regarding design sprints. So really welcome. We are here also with Igor Lagreca, one of the best renowned teachers that we have in Brazil. So, Igor, you're muted. Not sure if it's on purpose.
Hi, everyone. Nice to be here. Thank you, Alvaro. Thank you, Stefan.
Yeah, no. So, well, let's before we start, this is our first webinar in English. Actually, some people here may be familiar with the webinars that we run here in Brazil in Portuguese. In this case, we're doing that in English, also because Stefan doesn't speak that much Portuguese, so it'll be like interesting for sharing. Let's move on. So first thing is that we're going to talk today about lean design sprint, but I think it's interesting to give some context. So what are we going to talk about? Design sprints are actually some kind of, we can say, kind of a recipe of design thinking. So it's very important to discuss lean design sprint that actually will address a little bit the design thinking process. So that's something that we're going to just highlight, just to give some basic information about that, but you probably have heard about it. So it's just actually one slide. The other part is about design sprints itself. So design sprints, it's kind of a method that has evolved over the few years. So it's very interesting to understand if it's something that's we are trying to change a little bit. So it's very important to know exactly where it came from, because all the techniques that we are going to present here that has been already been applied, they are quite nice and very good. So we are not saying that we are creating something or presenting something that actually changes or destroys or make it less from other techniques that were presented before. But so we're going to discuss a little bit about the context of design sprints itself. And another thing to mention it's quite important, it's about the context on what are you talking about in the product development. So for here, I'll just, for those who know PIM-Go, the product integration model, I'll just briefly and quickly highlight exactly at what point we are talking about today. So the product integration model is a framework that actually you can apply for any product or project development, and you can do that end to end. So since the conception phase, the beginning, you know, when you have a problem or a need or a desire of a customer or end user, and you can do this and actually identify solutions and get the product development itself and deliver to the client. So that's what we are actually discussing here. But design sprint and design thinking, they actually come at a certain moment in this development. So in this case, I'm just entering here the PIM-Go agile model, could be the hybrid model as well. The hybrid more engaged in situations that you have more predictive development. So you have a schedule, you have a budget, you have something that you need to follow and forecast. But for the agile model, it's more like an agile way of working in the sense of actually sprints. But what I mean is that in this website, the PIM-Go.com, you can actually get access to this map that you can here highlight kind of a flow or a map of the product development process. And what we are discussing today, it's here just in the beginning. So we're talking about this moment here, actually, when you have a design thinking or design sprint, when you have just identified the problem that you're going to be addressing, and then identifying how we're going to be ideating solutions for this and validating with the users. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And why is this important? Because actually when we discuss this kind of ideation process, it's mainly done collaboratively. So you have to get many people with different perspectives to do it. So actually you can create some kind of innovative projects. So in this case, we're going to be, for example, design sprint has been applied in many cases for designing websites or designing apps for mobile. And in this case, for example, when you're designing something new, quite new, so in this case, we'll have an app that actually you take pictures of vegetables, and then the app send you the recipes with the vegetables that you can cook. So that's something quite new. So the idea behind design sprint is like, how can you design something that it's kind of the interface with the user and how they're going to flow during the app and their journey. That's kind of based on his experience, from his perspective. So it's user-centric. And we can say, like, for example, for kids, you can have a sync. It's simple as a sync, but you can, from the kids' perspective, you may need something different. And can be for adults as well. So we may, if you want beer and you want to watch the Netflix, the latest series, I don't know, Queen's Gambit, you can just use this kind of product, which connects both. So the idea is to connect something that's quite different. To do different products or innovative products, you may need a method, you may need tools, the right tools, and you need a mindset. So that's what Stefan will be discussing here today with his examples. So that's what I wanted to highlight, Stefan. So feel free to jump and provide some kind of, I don't know, background regarding the Lean Design Sprint, which is actually a method that he has been applying in his career, and actually is a little bit different from the traditional design sprint as well. So, Stefan, I just pass to you.
Sure, thanks, Alvaro. I'm sharing my screen. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. So talking about the Lean Design Sprint, let's just quickly look at the three words in the label. So Lean, Design, and Sprint. So we are looking at Lean as a thinking concept, a way of working that is very much based on experimenting. It's geared towards maximizing customer value. It's looking at continuously improving the way we work, and it's about minimizing waste. Anything that is not necessary, let's try to cut it out. So you really want to achieve what's called flow, something that doesn't hold you back, something that makes you work continuously with the goal in mind. And how do I move this? So, okay, next one. So the design aspect of the Lean Design Sprint is very much coming from the design thinking approach that was developed by the D-School Stanford. We're going through different modes. We start with empathizing, learning about the audience, look at defining, sharpening our questions. Then we go into prototyping, creating solutions, ideating, creating ideas, moving on and giving our ideas specific expressions by building prototypes, one prototype or several. Different techniques can be applied here. I'll get back to that. And really the most important part is that we test our prototypes with people where we can get good feedback from. So this is very much a human-centric prototyping approach. It's about iterating, experimenting, identifying opportunities for synthesis, and for seeking feedback. And the last part, the sprint, is what we take from Agile with Scrum. Many of you might be familiar with this. It's the delivery rhythm of an iteration of 5 days, 10 days, 20 days, depending on what you're doing. It's all about delivering early and often. It's working with cross-functional teams of developers. There's also an element of continuous improvement and a focus on creating business value. So we bring these three elements together, and you see that there is an overlap between those, but they also stand alone. And what they all share is that they are an open mindset. There is always space for experimenting, for trying out new things, for continuously improving. So maximizing the value, minimizing the waste, looking at the human-centric approach and having a delivery in mind. So we don't want to stop here when we have a prototype. We actually want to go on and deliver, make things real. So if we look at the evolution of design sprints during the last 5 years, there are 2 books at the beginning, the one by Banfield, Lombardo, and Wax by the end of 2015 published, and then maybe the most famous one, Sprint, from Jake Knapp. That kicked off, I think, a kind of community of people running design sprints. You see that from late 2018, people tried to move away from the classic approach, mainly because they were under time pressure. AJ Smart, Jonathan Courtney, they have developed what's called a design sprint version 2.0. And then the year after that, the Design Sprint Academy, the version 3.0. And what we are talking about today is an approach very much building on all these approaches. Many of the ideas that I'll talk about here are also discussed, for example, in Banfield's book, where we try to move away from the idea of 5 days, as we have it here, to something that is a bit more flexible. We are talking about 7 sessions and the attempt to run a design sprint in 3 days or less. Okay, so just recapping, the classic design sprint structure is the 5 days. On Monday, we start out with creating a map, choosing a target. On Tuesday, we translate what we discussed into visuals. From there, we move on to build a synthesis of all these discussions to decide what we're actually building. Day 4 is dedicated to building the prototype. And number 5, the last day, is all about testing, getting feedback, and then basically continuing the learning experience that might then lead back to a new challenge and you could start again. So we have, that's important, a couple of roles here. The decider, the person who really calls the shots, says where we are going, what is the challenge we want to address. The facilitator, helping the team with being productive, going through these different techniques, and the team that we need to address a specific challenge. So there's nothing wrong with this. So if you can afford the classic approach, if you can afford it, do it. But the challenges you might face is that stakeholders might not have the time to engage for that time. The effort might be too costly, and you might not have the know-how. So with the lean design sprint, we try to contribute to that way of running design sprints in a slightly different way. It's an approach based on sessions, not days. None of these sessions take a whole day, and it's a specific and flexible set of techniques. And I'll dive into that as we go on. So for the approach of hacking the classic design sprint in the lean way, we are talking about a short framing session followed by a longer understanding phase, the importance of getting things into visuals, then dedicating half a day to prototyping, but also thinking already what comes next. How do we prepare the most important part here, the validation of our prototypes? The validation can also go wrong. There can be insights that tell us we are on the wrong path, but that's also a success because we cut short the learning time that we needed to get to this point. We keep the roles that we know from the classic design sprint. So if you look at the same in a more detailed view, then we get to this picture here. We are starting with a challenge that we frame. We ask more questions. We're setting goals. We're going through different exercises to sharpen our problem statement before we get into specific visualizing techniques that prepare us for the prototyping phase. And more interesting here also at the end, then again, how do we actually make sure that we prepare well for the interviews and then collect the, reap the fruit that we find in these interviews to properly debrief and decide on the next steps. So I'll step into this by looking at a mirror board that we have prepared for this session here today. So let's assume that we have a certain scenario. Timely, let's assume we have a small team around Lucy. Lucy is concerned about the impact of the pandemic on people who lose their job. She is searching for an opportunity to help people who are impacted. And there is one particular group that stands out. It's pilots, people operating airplanes that they want to focus on with that particular investigation. So they come up with a challenge that they formulate in the form of a how might we question. So how might we enable pilots who find themselves without a job and a salary because of COVID-19 to utilize their skills and earn money? So look, we apply the 7 sessions. We move into the detail, and for the part of the presentation here today that is just dealing with this part, I'll stay in the mirror board, and then I will go back into the slide deck for the other remaining 4 sessions. Okay, so let's start with the challenge itself. So Lucy is very interested in this question and she is keen to generate solutions for it. So there's a pitch. The pitch can be very short. You see for this whole exercise at the bottom here, I always indicate roughly what the time is that we think that should take. So these are indicators. This is not cut in stone. That can be flexible. I won't point this out every time. So short, fast pace, give more detail, share the research, and generate more interest. From there, we move on into the first technique in that understanding session, which we call dig deeper into the challenge. This is about sharing thoughts, opinions, suggestions, raising concerns and doubts, asking deeper questions, and not just stop where you think you're not sure, but also to make constructive suggestions on what should be done instead. So we either physically in a room or a web-based whiteboard, we create these 3 columns with the headers I like, I'm not so sure, what if, how about. And we could assume that there is feedback from people in the team, jotting down their ideas, noting down their ideas on Post-its. But we get maybe statements like, yeah, that's I'm impacted by this myself. This is a global problem. It's worth addressing. Maybe the solutions we come up with can be inspiring for people in other industries. In the not so sure column, should we tackle that at all? The challenge, maybe it has been done already and it's not relevant anymore. What about the long-term impact? Is it worth the effort? And by reaching the 3rd column where we ask what if, how about, we could also ask questions around the scope. So what if we go beyond the group of pilots and also look at the aviation professionals in general? So from here we move on.
Sorry, Stefan, I'll just say that one thing that we did, that me and Stefan together, was that we were trying to get kind of an example on how we could apply this kind of lean design sprint, because it's quite extensive and we can actually don't have much time. So when we were discussing the problem, we say like, oh, let's try to find something that's actually happening today. And so we did some kind of this I'm not so sure, because we'll say like, oh, that's actually a global problem. And I'm not impacted myself, but I can see people who have been. So actually pilots who are not able to be working today, it's kind of a important problem to be solved. So so that's the idea of actually evaluating the problem itself by giving this kind of thoughts on the challenge. And I think we did that ourselves, and that's why also we brought this kind of example. So sorry, Stefan, I just talked too much.
Okay, no, thanks. That's an important point. Sorry, I should have made that clear at the beginning. So I move on with the next technique called goals and anti-goals. This is about sharpening the direction on where you want to go. Again, individuals in the team are asked to note down their contributions on post-its, and we go through every post-it, we cluster and prioritize. So again, that can look like this. So the goals, what do we want to achieve? And often when we try to define what we want, it can help to just talk about the opposite, what we do not want instead. So again, there can be contributions around what's the effort, what's the cost, how complicated or simple should it be, what language is important, what professional age groups are we looking at, what sort of communication channels, what's the target areas. And to talk about the opposite, let's focus on one group, let's not go everywhere, let's not dilute the focus and the scope. And also let's look at something that is good enough to go out there. It doesn't need to be maybe something totally robust and refined. To work with the team to refine this further, we just have a simple voting mechanism. Everyone in the team gets 3 dots. Lucy as the decider, as the lead, as the most, as the initiator of that challenge, gets an extra veto vote just in case we need it, should we get stuck. So progressing with the board, we could get something like this, clustering the different themes that come up, labeling them. And you see that we have a cluster around groups of people. We've got a cluster around how quickly and how expensive should it be? And do we start to invent things from scratch, or are we building on something that already exists? So the votes you see here are distributed across the different contributions. That means the most important part for the team is to have something that is quick and low cost. The other things are still important. It's just showing you quickly what's the weight, what do people rank as more important and less important. From here, we move on to a technique called facts, assumptions, and questions. So what are facts? Facts are things or statements that you have evidence for. Assumptions are still statements, opinions that you are not necessarily able to back up with facts. It's a hunch, it's a gut feel. It's important, but it's not, you don't have a proof for it. And that's maybe something that you want to test in that design sprint as we go along. And questions is everything about knowledge gaps that could be purely about information that you need, or also about raising doubts and showing your skepticism about certain areas. So we are still in the post-it mode. We collect statements from the individuals in the team. We discuss, clarify, sort, and in reality, it then can look like this. So we collect the facts from wherever we get them, news items or reports. We have numbers. We also see if the market in the aviation industry is suffering. There are not necessarily, that's not necessarily the case for every market everywhere to the same degree. The other markets, other industries might be actually suffering from the opposite, from not enough people to work. The assumptions are more around, so if we look at pilots out of their job, grounded, they're skilled people, so we can assume that they have transferable skills. How do we work with that? We can also assume that because it's a global problem, there's a community, there are many people who are impacted by this. Is there something around camaraderie, something around a community that maybe is something we can work with? And questions are more around things that we don't know, that we can easily Google and find out. But there's also more conceptual questions maybe around what is required for this transferable skill problem. So as a next step, we are just working with the middle column, just the assumptions. We're looking at so-called assumptions 2x2 metrics. We sort, prioritize assumptions, and define what we actually want to test. So this is more about creating a scope. So the quadrants we have here, one quadrant is what do we test first? Another is what do we test after that? What next? And maybe we do test something or we just leave it completely out. So for the progression of the design sprint, we probably want to just look at the top two quadrants as a focus, and we can leave what we have at the bottom for later or ignore entirely. You see, I'm just working here with the assumptions. I assume that we agreed on the facts. I assume that we also test some of the questions that we have answers for, but we still want to get feedback on. And then there are questions that I didn't actually manage to get any answers for. And this is what we definitely want to investigate further. So from here, we move to a technique that we call persona. You might be familiar with this. Another name is composite character profile. It's a way of building a human-centric focus or a profile of the people or the type of people we are actually trying to build our solutions, our prototypes for. The same kind of type of people we want to then meet in the validation phase to get their feedback on. So this is about clarifying typical situations, edge cases, and also to look at what's the pain that these people have, we think, and how can we maybe turn this pain into gain. So I came up with a very simple persona here. We build a bit of a profile. It can be a bit more lightweight. It doesn't need to be scientifically serious and everything totally correct. There can be a bit of a light approach to this as well. We want to have a statement, maybe a typical one that we found in some source of information that we have. We want to describe this person a bit more by typical adjectives maybe, and then move into very specifically what are the goals, what are the needs, what is it that they are frustrated about, and then we can use a few more designerly techniques where we can create a slider where we have certain character profiles and indicate where we think this particular persona sits. So from here we move on to what we call a user journey map. So we are looking at what is the sequence of steps in an experience. We are looking at building context, showing perspective, and then scrutinizing, checking, is that perspective, that sequence of steps actually the best sequence there is, or could that be different? A journey map on a very high level, very abstract, looks at different phases. So there's a step one and following steps. At each step, we have a certain goal. We can also look at, once we see the steps and the goals, we can ask questions around what would be alternative approaches to this? What about this? Or what if we do that? And very important, we also want to shed light, draw attention to what's the emotional state that our users are in when they go through this experience, this sequence of steps. So as an example that we're working with here, let's bring together the persona and the user the user journey map. We are personalizing our how might we question from the beginning. So it's not as generic anymore. It's now more tailored to a specific person that we could imagine exists. And we can say, look, there is probably something around deciding, making that step, searching for a new job, signing a contract and working in that new job. And there are opportunities coming with this. And there are also specific emotional states. So in our design effort, we want to then look at addressing these opportunities. And we are keen on also addressing these emotional states and improving them. So what can we do here, for example, to make it less of a negative or anxious experience? How can we design a solution that is less confusing? And how can we maybe design something around community building that it allows individuals in that experience to ask questions early on, get some support, and so on. So depending on your challenge, that's probably one thing you want to do. You want to bring together a typical user and a typical journey, but also early on highlight what are possible solutions, opportunities, and the emotions that are involved. So we reached here the end of the understanding phase. And here it's good to just check in after all the discussions we had here with briefing and setting the goals and clarifying assumptions, answering questions, if the original statement, the original how might we question is still valid. So a simple step could be, we can just leave it, yes, fine, but we now are better prepared. Or we say, well, we could slightly tailor the original challenge by maybe reducing the scope to increase the focus to help with design efforts later on. And here I just suggest that we say, okay, we add on, or we make more narrow the focus by saying in the farming industry. So we see that some industries actually lack some personnel as opposed to others like the aviation industry. Is there an opportunity here to bring these two together? So we went through the frame and understand sessions, and now we go and switch to a different mode of working. We're going visual, we are moving away from discussions and words. We are looking at visualizing, creating parallel designs, and we're looking at quantity, not quality. And here it's interesting to see sometimes in workshops that for people working in an office environment, this is a bit of a step change. So I think no one needs to be afraid here. Humans have been drawing many thousands of years longer than they have been writing. So we should be fine drawing. Everyone can draw. We're looking for quantity. We're not looking for quality. It's a sketch that helps our thinking. So what we do with that technique called Crazy 8, we take a sheet of paper, we fold it once, twice, a third time, and then just unfold it again. And you see that here, we get these 8 rectangles on an A4 or A3 format. And we are looking at translating everything that we discussed so far into visuals. There can be drawings. It could be drawings annotated with words. It could be words just in a very rough way to describe. And this Crazy 8 or set of sketches in the Crazy 8 is not standalone. It's going to be presented. Let's assume everyone in the team has that time of creating a Crazy 8, maybe 10 minutes, 12, and quite a range of possible solutions at this point. So everyone in the team presents to everyone else, and we keep asking questions around, so yeah, what did I like about this Crazy 8? What I'm not so sure about, what would I suggest as an alternative? So we move on from here to look at possible solutions for this. So imagine we have the original how might we question that we now have answered, not with post-its and discussions and words anymore, but now we have the set of drawings, and from there we draw out a set of common themes. And we see we could answer the how might we question with building a website or with advertising recruitment on recruitment sites that exist. We could look at using WhatsApp or Facebook as the group channel to see whether we can generate interest here and outcomes here. We could also look at physical meetups or job fairs, but with the pandemic, especially now, that's maybe not a great option. So what we do, we return to what we have done earlier. The team votes again. All these contributions are important, but some are more important, and that's what we want to get a feel for. So what we do here, you see here's an example. We have all sorts of crazy 8 contributions. Some go about this in a very meticulous way. Others take it less seriously, put less effort in there. Then we have here an example from a designer who definitely didn't just spend 15 minutes on this. And you see that there are common themes coming out here, and we vote on those. And this is what we then carry forward. This is 2 prototypes that we want to build. 2 prototypes, 2 sketches here that we build a synthesis from all these different contributions, and then use prototyping techniques to make it a testable experience for our end users. So all in all, this should take you just a bit over an hour. So what we have done by this point, I will leave the mirror board here now and go back to the slide. So we cover the frame, the understand, and the draw sessions. So let me now go back to the slide deck.
I just like to highlight that if you have any questions, just feel free to write in the chat. Again, can be in Portuguese, English, that's fine. Just feel free to do it, and we can get the questions running during the session itself or at the end. Thanks.
Okay. So I continue here, and let's talk about prototyping techniques. So prototyping can be achieved in many, many different ways. There is no one right way, and everyone should do it. There is as many teams we have, probably as many ways of prototyping we can find. So there is an approach by just keeping things simple and quick. We just get some papers, Post-its, pencils, Sharpies, and build a paper-based prototype. We could also look at more traditional Office software. We could take Keynote or PowerPoint and use that as a prototyping technique with a slide deck. But if you want to take things a bit more seriously and put more design effort in this, most teams have a designer in there, also sometimes a business analyst or a product manager or a product owner who knows how to work with software that user interface, user experience designers are using. So Miro would be a good tool, Mural, Sketch, Figma. Then InVision has a freehand tool, Lucidchart can help you with this. And then you have these Sketch, Zeppelin, Abstract. These are tools that actually allow you to build libraries of design components that you maybe can reuse. And you can get with InDesign and Illustrator, you can get to more interesting, richer illustrations. And then you should not shy away from looking at the tangible stuff, Lego blocks, prop boxes, sticks, clay. So prop boxes are things that you collect in big plastic boxes. It could be fabric, that could be little toys, it could be all sorts of things that in themselves are cheap and don't have much meaning, but in that thinking process, it can help to distill ideas and sharpen your thinking toward a prototype that makes a difference. So here are a few examples from using Sketch. A designer would be able to work with the software to come up with a design. Similar, very similar, you would get this in Figma. You could do the same in Miro. And then using props looks a bit more messy, and maybe some of these prototypes or ideas that come out of this look, if you haven't been part of this, look meaningless and maybe scary or useless. But in the context of the discussion, they can make a lot more sense. Same here with Lego. A colleague of mine ran these workshops with Lego for a number of years, where your little example here of that platform helps you to express that idea that you want to build in the prototype. Let's move on. So I covered now also the prototyping part. Now you want to make sure that you get proper feedback for all the effort that you put into the design sprint so far. And you can do this in several ways. So before Corona, we just met at the office or at a good place for the customer. Since Corona, all this is happening virtually. There are drawbacks, there are advantages of this. You want to pair up two people from the team. You want to see whether you could work with one customer or two. You probably have some sort of interview guide that you need to prepare in Word or on a device. And then there is a prototype in Sketch that you want to show, or another prototyping tool, or you build something with this tangible stuff. You just open your camera on your laptop and show that to the customers you want to get the feedback from. So in the design sprint, in Jake Knapp's approach, but many other approaches as well, we're looking at 5+ such interviews. And if you do this virtually, you could actually split the team into 5 different groups and run these 5+ interviews in parallel. And after that, you have done that, you come back and debrief. Okay, so this was a very, very quick run through the different sessions. And just to reveal, there is actually a Facebook group called Pilots for Harvest 2020, where one woman in Australia had a thought process around how to connect pilots who were grounded with the farming industry that all happened during the summer of 2020. And at that point, it became clear that there would be a very, very good harvest coming in autumn, and that pilots are people who can operate these big farming machines called headers. And that was a successful, simple solution, but it required some thinking along the lines that I described. Okay, to conclude my presentation, let me just summarize quickly and give you a couple of takeaways. When you run a design sprint, a lean design sprint, make sure you work with an experienced and empathetic facilitator. It is quite labor intensive. People can get a bit stuck or a bit lost on the way because there is a lot to do in the compressed amount of time. Also try to move as quickly as you can from discussions, documentation, words to visual expressions, because that will focus your thinking further. Especially with running lean design sprints, be conscious about keeping the delivery process in mind from the start. There are design sprints that I have seen that just stop at the end of the validation and then nothing happens. So a lean design sprint is definitely geared towards implementation. It's very important that you explain your intent in your validation sessions clearly, but then after you've done that, to step back and listen, observe, and see what happens. Not to try to defend your prototype and explain it more, and actually take away the time that you have to get feedback from your customers or testers that you're meeting. Any design effort always benefits from sharing your results, because this is a journey that's a learning process that never really ends. So stay open, show what you found out, get feedback. And the last point really is, think about making it a habit. It's a way of working that is different from a traditional office day-to-day type of working. It's a very intense way of getting to decisions faster, learning quicker, and maybe getting actually better results. With that, I would like to conclude and hand back to Alvaro. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stefan. I enjoyed so much the example that you brought. Actually, it's very interesting to know that's actually a kind of a real example, because it came from an article initially. That's that Stefan showed, the Guardian one. And then they translated to actually a startup based on an idea that's kind of different. I would never imagine that actually we have pilots that will be grounded without jobs in this pandemic, and actually working or interested in working in the farming industry. So it's kind of I think it's a way of thinking out of the box. So as we said, like Lean Design Sprint can do that quite quickly, under 3 days. It's quite awesome. So the concept of fail fast, and now it's more modern, we say like learn fast. It's all about testing the hypothesis to see if it's validated or not. Maybe if it's not validated, so for example, if pilots don't have any interest in working in the farming industry, so you just move to something else, and we don't waste resources and time with this. So thank you very much, Stefan, for sharing with us your experience and your example regarding about using the Lean Design Sprint approach. I will just continue here just to highlight what happens next. So what we are saying now is that as I said, like we are at a certain moment here that we did this kind of design thinking or design sprint approach. It can be any of those, can be the Lean Design Sprint, or can be any other technique that perhaps your company may use. And then I would like to highlight that actually, as you can use this in various ways, the implementation as well will be different. So I'll just come back to the PIM-Go big picture. This one is in English, but for Brazilian people or Portuguese speaking people, we can actually use the Portuguese version. And I would like actually recommend this because you have other resources here that's available in Portuguese. But anyway, so in this case, I would just like to highlight that actually for the implementation of any part of this, you can use the map as well. And in the PIM-Go map, you can click on any icon, and it will bring you to explanation about how to execute that part. So in this case, for example, you're saying about design thinking. Let's say that I don't know much about design thinking, but I want to apply this and give it a try. So how can I do this? So you can click on the icon and you can get a read about, oh, what's this? And why should I use design thinking, for example? And how would I use it? And PIM-Go provides the canvases that you can actually use directly for free. It's available on the website. So you can, for example, how do I do ideation? You can use the techniques that Stefan presented for the design thinking, design sprint. But you can, for example, if you're using for design thinking, you can use other canvases as well. One thing that's very interesting, that's something that was quite new. So if we come to Miroverse, which is the Miro library that we have in Miro, that they provide some templates. So we actually got the design thinking template just a few weeks ago or a couple of months ago in Miroverse. So if you go and say like design thinking in Miro, it's a curated library, so it's not, it has to pass certain standards, and you can find there the product integration model there. So it's we're very proud of that, actually being able to get our templates into Miro directly. So you can use the design thinking template directly from here. But let me get back to what I meant about the next steps. First is the next step after the design sprint process. So if you're working in more like an agile way of working, so you're probably going to be running sprints. And what I mean about this is that after you do this part of actually getting or reaching a solution and validating with the users, you may want to detail a little bit more this process. So you may want to get, for example, the idea that was like, oh, let's create something, a website for pilots that actually are seeking for jobs and they don't have actually matching, they don't match their skills. And let's try to focus and connect them to the farming industry. You may need to detail this a little bit more. So actually one way of doing this is filling some canvas. You can do the lean canvas or the project value canvas. And then group this or summarize those into a product vision. So when you summarize a product vision, it's like a statement. So it's very simple, but it gives the guidance for the development team later on what they are going to build. This in the new Scrum guide, the Scrum Guide 2020. It's called the product goal. So it's it didn't exist before with this name, but it's something new that came with this new Scrum. So the product goal, it's kind of a vision. So where you want to reach. And after you do this, and then you actually build your product based on Agile, or you can build it in a more predictive way. So all this done when working with programs and portfolio, so you can actually have the governance that's necessary to make sure that things are running and moving forward. So what I would like to highlight in this case is that it doesn't matter exactly if you're working with Agile or if you're working with something else. For example, if you're working more a hybrid model, this will mean that this part will be more predictive. This means that actually you're going to be making schedules, making budgets, and trying to forecast what's going to happen, making a plan, a more detailed plan, and that's all fine, all good. But in this case, what important to say is that the conception phase or the phase that's before where you get your business case or you get your vision, they are quite the same. So it doesn't matter exactly if you're moving or building your product in more structured way or more cascading or more waterfall model, or if you're building a product in an agile way. So that's all good. So by saying this, that will be the next step. So it's interesting to have connected the design sprint method that you'll be running into something that's actually going to be getting into some kind of development process. Maybe you're going to get the items into a Trello board or maybe using other tools, but it doesn't matter that much. It's important that you have for your company a way of doing this. One other thing is that's very important I would like to highlight that for this to work, I understand that actually you need first the right tools. And Stefan brilliantly showed a lot of tools that can be used. The first time I heard about Miro was by Stefan. He still is very knowledgeable about all the tools that exist and such. And I was trying to always, that's something new. So Stefan knows, and I try to get in and try to search and do the research regarding this. And but the idea is to have some kind of a variety of tools, because as we said, like sometimes the company wants to run a design thinking process that's quite wide and gather many people. I ran in my work a design thinking process that had 35 people. So we are making the plan for 2021, and we got all these people in the Miro boards. So we had to split into teams. So it's quite different, but this was adapted to the reality that actually what we need to deliver. So what I mean by this picture is that it's interesting that you have many tools and you're knowledgeable in many tools. So many tools could be Miro, can be Miro, can be maybe Figma or any other, but also the method. So if you at least knows the traditional design sprint approach, it's very useful. Maybe knowing the design thinking of the PIM-Go model, it's interesting as well. And lean design sprint can be something additional that you can also use. And so it's a set of tools that you have, and you enhance your toolkit. So that's the idea. And one question that may happen is that, wow, how can I learn more, or perhaps maybe able to apply this to my company? I may be interested into trying this. So one way of thinking about this is you need to give it a try and maybe perhaps learn a little bit more. What we tried to prepare was kind of a 3-step, which is we consolidated into a website. So you can go to leandesignsprint.com, and at this website, I'll show you just really quickly what's that about. And then you can have lots of information there that you can actually use. So I just go here, just so you have a little bit of the explanation of the benefits and such, but then you have the 7 sessions here, and you can just highlight what you want to see. And they have like a full article regarding that's something that Stefan wrote. I added a few parts, and it's very detailed on how Lean Design Sprint can be used. So it's an interesting article. And now here you have also we prepared an ebook with these 8 techniques that were presented today. So you can just go there if you want and get your name there and your email, and you can just send, we're going to send an email to you with the ebook directly. So, and Igor just told me that perhaps sometimes you click, it takes a little bit of a while, but don't worry, we send, the email is being sent to you. If you don't receive by any chance, so just contact us, not a problem. And if you want to run Design Sprint, or if you just want to talk about it, or if you have any questions later on when you just read the material, it's all about the community, right? It's all about getting in touch with people and clarifying. That's I learned a lot with Stefan in my period in New Zealand and afterwards. So it's when the community get together and start discussing things, it's very interesting, and actually we enhance our knowledge regarding the subject. So just contact us if you want to discuss the topic, if you have any questions, if you want to discuss a problem that you have in your company that you may want to try Lean Design Sprint, we'll be happy to. So by saying this, that will be the 3 steps that we suggest, that we recommend, that you get more information about it. And then we get to any questions that you may have. So feel free. Do you want, anyone has any questions that you'd like to address to Stefan? As we have the time, if you have any questions, you may just write or open your microphone. That's fine as well.
Yes, Alvaro.
Oh, hi, Alexandre.
How are you? First of all, congratulations on this webinar, really very interesting. Just to mention that I became very interested in this approach. And as I told you before, we are certainly inviting you to come for a meeting with my team in charge of process management and quality management. But I really enjoyed this conversation. Congratulations.
Thank you very much, Alexandre.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Alexandre, for your comments. I would like to ask something to Stefan then. So just to maybe have one question that's it's something that came here when I arrived back from New Zealand, is that people were asked me when we were teaching something about Agile, the students would say like, okay, but how can I apply Agile to my company? And that my company, it's not IT, it's not something that's kind of software based. So is it possible to apply Agile into something that's not IT related? And how would that be with the Lean Design Sprint? So that will be my question to you, Stefan, if you can just.
Yeah, interesting question. Yes, we worked with the same approach with a company that created two-way radios, like walkie-talkies, and there is software in it, but the design sprint was geared towards building a new approach for working with customers. So we created a roadshow that involved a van, and we had all sorts of equipment in this van, and from we had customers in very remote places using this radio technology. And it was often difficult to actually engage with them and to understand what is important for them on the ground, where they are in these remote places. So instead of trying to imagine what it would be, we build a team that spend a couple of days going out in remote places with this van to demonstrate the products that we had, and also try to understand how in these specific remote places that would play out. And to organize that approach, we used a design sprint approach where we looked, so what about the logistics, what about the sequence, what about the presentation, what about certain challenges in more remote places. So yes, we use a design sprint for almost like a business model, not so much for a software solution. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Stefan. Any other questions that anyone might have?
Yes, I do. Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you very much for the presentation. It was super interesting. I just have a small question about the testing part, because I mean, you mentioned the option to like prototype with like do physical prototype.
Yes.
And you said that you're still using that when you're doing online design sprints, and I was interested to see how do you test them then if the users or testers cannot grab them and hold them. Thank you.
Yes, that's a very good question. It's not as good as it would be if you have a face-to-face meeting, but we found that we can still explain quite a lot by opening the camera. We kind of build a little base where we put the physical prototype on, and then carry the two people in the team, one moderating, the other one carrying the camera as good as we could do this. But of course, there is no touching involved, which is important for some design. Yes, so it's working with compromises here, and hopefully we get back soon where this is possible again. But yes, you put the finger into the wound here for designers.
So before we just finish, I would like to take a picture, if that's fine with you, if you're keen to open your camera to a final picture for us to share later. Just open your camera, if that's fine. It may be messy, maybe, like working from home, it's like sometimes too messy, but we'll be happy to. So thanks, Adriana, thanks, Edson, thanks, Fabricio. And I would say this, how we say that in New Zealand, Stefan, when we are, I don't know, saying hello or goodbye or something that's like happened. At least I learned to say like cheers, right? So I would say cheers, like so I would say like okay guys, cheers, and thank you very much for being here today for this presentation. I would like to, just as a final picture that I have that I'd like to share. It's actually from New Zealand, and as I said, like I met Stefan there, and I was in the beginning look for work in the IT space, and Stefan was already established agile coach there. So he helped me a lot mentoring how New Zealand market would work and such. So thank you very much for that as well, Stefan. And actually we engaged in some kind of pre-startup, which was very exciting. We were creating a agile educational platform online. And we did what we did there was that we used to meet at this building here on the left, which would be the AUT, the building that I was studying in the first year. And there was a cafe here, just as we can see, just barely the window. And in this cafe, actually, we did full process of validation. I was building the mock-ups and bringing clients, will be the end users, that will be the recruiters, and we were discussing with them, making interviews and such. And so we are going a little bit on the whole process of design sprint. and it was that, and that was very, very useful. So we were very, I don't know, it was a great opportunity for learning as well. So that was the building that I had there. That's the main building of New Zealand. And there was this beautiful park that was like in front of the university as well. So by saying this, I would just like to thank you, Stefan, very much for your presentation and all the knowledge that you have, and you're always willing to share. So thank you very much for that. And I would say just cheers for everyone. Thank you all for being here today and sharing that with us as well. So
cheers.
See you next time. We will keep in touch. Okay?
Thank you. Thanks, Alvaro. Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.